Hey, greetings from the Pacific Northwest. Bo here. I thought I would show my 1976-77 OPC WHA set. It is a complete set, and it's pretty nice. And there's going to be some spots where they're in numeric order, except for these first four. That's the Gordie Howe, the Houston Aeros. There's the Bobby Hull All-Star card. There's Bobby Hull base card, and there's Gordie's son Mark. Marty's got a card later in the set too. Okay, so we got your goal leaders. Here you've got Mark Tardif, Real Cloutier, and Vaclav Nedomansky of the Baby Bulls. I had no idea that he scored them, and he was a big goal scorer. J.C. Tremblay, Mark Tardif again, Ulf Nilsson. Mark Tardif, depending on how you like to say it. I've heard it said both ways. He was the WHA's all-time leading goal scorer. Andre Lacroix was the league's all-time leading scorer, period. Scoring leaders with Mark Tardif, Bobby Hull, Real Cloutier, and Ulf Nilsson. Ulf Nilsson, Anders Hedberg, Bobby Hull, of course, made up the very famous hotline in Winnipeg. They developed that European style. Here you got your penalty minute leaders, and I am not shocked to find Kurt Brackenberry and the machine gun Gord Gallant on that card. Important point leaders, okay. Again, Mark Tardif, Bobby Hull, Ulf Nilsson. And here you've got your goals against leaders, Michel Dion, Joe Daly, and Wayne Rutledge. Okay, so let's go through these cards here. So we got Barry Long of the Winnipeg Jets, Danny Lawson of the Calgary Cowboys. There's Ulf Nilsson, his base card. Kevin Morrison of the San Diego Mariners. Dig that hair. It's the best. Okay, so the interesting thing about this is Jerry Pinder. It says Fighting Saints. It shows him in a Cleveland Crusaders jersey. Well, the Cleveland the original Minnesota Fighting Saints folded. The California Golden Seals moved from Oakland to Cleveland, became the Cleveland Barons. So the Cleveland Crusaders of the WHA moved to Minnesota, became the Fighting Saints, played part of a season, and then they too folded. Richard Brodeur, the Nordiques. Robbie Fatorik, very solid player with your Phoenix Roadrunners. Tom Webster, the New England Whalers. I love the old Whalers logo. There's Mark's brother Marty Howe. Brian Campbell of the Oilers. Rick Dudley of the Cincinnati Stingers, and Jim Turkowitz of the Birmingham Baby Bulls. I don't know how you say his name. I forgive me. I don't know all these players, to be honest with you. And if I don't say their name right, forgive me for that. I am an American. We're terrible at pronouncing things. Rusty Patnude. There's Joe Daly. Wow, this is not even a French name. This is just Eastern European name. This is like an Italian name. Gary Vanderuzzo, we'll say, of your San Diego Mariners. I love that logo. Chris Evans, Mike Antonovich, pretty good goal scorer. He later played with the New England Whalers. Jim Dory of the Quebec Nordiques. John Gray. Larry Plow involved in that very famous fight between the Fighting Saints and the New England Whalers. Involved the oldest of the brothers. You know, two of them were in the movie Slapshot. I'm just drawing a blank on the name, which is embarrassing. But yes, very famous fight between the Whalers and the Minnesota Fighting Saints. But their older brother, Jack Carlson was in on that fight as well. The Carlson brothers. They were the Hanson brothers in the movie 2 and 3. Dave Hanson was also in it. Anyhow, Paul Popeil. None of those guys have any WHA cards, which is too bad. Missed opportunity for the old WHA. Ronald Leclerc, and the Sobchak was a pretty solid player. Lars-Erik Schuberg. So the last year of the WHA, you had the retirement of Bobby Hull. And Hedberg and Nilsson jumped to the NHL, played with the New York Rangers. So the Houston Aeros had tried to jump to the NHL, got denied. The franchise folded, so they combined Winnipeg and Houston. They were enemies, because they had big rivals. And so they finally came together that last year after a rough start and put together, and they won the last Avco Cup. Interestingly enough, with a team that they say was good enough that they would have competed for the Stanley Cup. They could have maybe even beat Montreal, but we'll never know because the the merger rules were so bad that they broke those WHA teams up, and Winnipeg really suffered in the early years of the NHL. Wayne Wood, Ron Chipperfield, Tom Sheehy, Brent Hughes. Oh my goodness. That's a great look there, Brent. Ron Ward, Ron Hudson. That looks like a wig. Hairpiece. Rosie Pamont. It's funny. That's a Whalers jersey, but that's an Indianapolis Racers logo. So obviously he'd been traded, and they just kind of airbrushed some of it off. Terry Roskowski, pretty solid player. Hugh Harris, J.C. Tremblay, got his name on the cup. I believe Montreal jumped to the WHA later. Rich Leduc, Peter Sullivan, Jerry Henry Rollins. That's a joke. Ken Broderick. I love these old goalie cards. Look at that old equipment. You know, that's better. Pete Driscoll, Joe Norris, Al McLeod, Bruce Landon. We're going to ignore that because he's underneath. Chris Bordelot, Tommy Bergman, Hall of Famer Dave Keon. Dave Keon, after the merger, he was playing with the Hartford Whalers, went back, I think his first game was in Toronto, and he paid him back on Hockey Night in Canada with a big night, beat the Leafs at the Maple Leaf Gardens. Butch Deadmarsh, Calgary Cannons, that's baseball. Used to be a baseball team. Calgary Cowboys uniform, but Fighting Saints. Brian Maxwell, Cincinnati Stingers defenseman. John Garrett, Glenn Sather. Pretty decent coach, if I remember right. John Mazook. Hexi Rihironada. I mean, he's another one of those Finnish guys. Those names are the hardest for me to pronounce. Richard Grenier. Gene Peacock, Joe Daly, J.C. Tremblay. These are all All-Star cards. Lars Erik Schuberg, Vaclav Nedomansky. Underneath, let's ignore that one. Anders Hedberg, Christopher Abrahamson, Kevin Morris, that hair still, Paul Schmier, Andre Lacroix, great book, After the Second Snowfall, about his time as a hockey player. Great book, really good guy. I've heard him on several podcasts. If you get a chance, pick the book up. Gene Peacock, Gordie Howe's All-Star card. You got Bob Nevin, Richard Lemieux, Mike Ford, Rial Cloutier, Al McDonough, Del Hall, Tommy Abrahamson, Andre Lacroix, Frank Hughes, Phoenix Roadrunners, Reg Thomas of the Pacers, Indiana, not the ABA. Actually, they've been the NBA at this point. This is the Indianapolis Racers, not the Pacers. Gene Inkpen, Paul Henderson, the hero of '72. What did he win? 3 games, 3 game winners. Hero, '72 Summit Series. Paul Henderson, Dave Dryden, Ken's brother, Len Powis, Andre Boudre, maybe. Veli Pekka Kitola. Cam Connor is a pretty solid player. Claude St. Sauvigny. Gary Swain. Ernie Wakely. Blair McDonald. Ron Plum. Al Carlander. Peter Marin. Al Hamilton. Pauline Bordelot, Gavin Kirk. Let's ignore that because that's underneath. Rick Leave is a pretty solid defenseman. Gary Kurt, John Pye McKenzie, Hall of Famer. Al Carlander, John French, John Hughes, Ron Graham, Mark Napier, Serge Bernier, Christopher Abrahamson, the Big M, Frank Mahavlich, Ted Green, Rick Jonzio. Jonzio was involved in a pretty brutal fight. I think it was with Mark Tardif. Kind of cut Tardif played play later, but he was never quite the same player. I think he should have been in the Hall of Fame, but Jod's a pretty famous cheap shot, if I remember right. Michel Dion, Rich Preston, Pekka Radicalio, another one of those Finnish, Swedish, Norwegian names. Unmarked checklist. There's Mark Tardif, Doug Barry, Vaclav Nedemansky, Bill Lasuk, Wayne Connolly, Pierre Goot, not sure, Ralph Backstrom. There's Mr. Anders Hedberg, Norm Ullman. Last few. We got Steve Sutherland. John Shella was a solid defenseman. Don McLeod. And you got your playoff cards. Winnipeg defeated, I'm not sure who they beat there. Houston wins the American. So you have the Canadian finals, the U.S. finals, and then Winnipeg wins the Avco Cup. 76, this one in 75-76. So 76-77 OPC WHA cards. Thanks for watching.